You read the title, you saw the thumbnail. This is Gojo vs Sukuna in 2025. Even though Gojo and Sukuna's fight ended over a year ago, it's September 2023. Yeah, little don't you? People are still talking about this fight all the time. I wanted to cover every popular scenario. This vid is gonna be a little bit different from my previous one. There's gonna be a how the fight would go part. This vid's gonna be split into sections. You can watch any section in any order, so I'm gonna be repeating a lot of stuff. This vid's gonna be split to Shinjuku Gojo, 20-finger Megumi, Shinjuku Gojo vs Heian Sukuna, Shinjuku Gojo vs 20-finger Yuji Kuna, Post-Prism Gojo vs 15-finger Megumi, Shibuya Gojo vs Heian Sukuna, Shibuya Gojo vs 20-finger Yuji Kuna. The reason I won't be including Shibuya Gojo vs 15-finger Yuji Kuna in Shibuya is because I already did a whole video on that. We're also going to be tallying up the scores of each matchup to see who's truly the strongest. Even though this fight already happened and Sukuna won the fight, because he's better, people still make arguments for Gojo, so I'll just prove some of them. And some people wank Sukuna, so I'll just prove some of those too. Gojo can't just spam hollow purple. I see people say this, but he just can't. One, Sukuna isn't gonna let him spam purple. Leave Gojo flies in the air and just spams it. There's most likely a cooldown to using the move. Otherwise, Gojo would just spam it. And the long start up it takes. And this also just isn't in character for Gojo to do. Gojo literally says he went all out and give it his all in the fight with Sukuna. So any other arguments people say that Gojo is nerfed or not going all out, this can't be used because Gojo literally says he went all out. This also includes Gojo teleporting outside Sukuna's domain. Sukuna was also going all out in the fight. People say he wasn't, but this isn't true. Gojo's statement about Sukuna not being able to give his all simply means that Sukuna was able to use all of his abilities. An example of what Gojo means is Sukuna telling Gojo he'll give her everything. Sukuna couldn't do that with Gojo because of Infinity. Sukuna used all his abilities and he wanted to use Raga to adapt to Infinity. Sukuna also couldn't admit the word coding slash himself. I will admit, I used to say this, but he can't. There's no way he would have changed his cushion technique that much to the point where it's hitting space. He needed Maharaga as a blueprint. He says this himself. I don't really have much else to say. We literally see this fight happen, and Sukuna won it. So that's one tally for Sukuna. Shinjuku Gojo vs Heian Sukuna. Something I want to note when covering this debate is that Sukuna will be taken directly from the Heian era. Both his crystals, and he won't know anything about Gojo's domain or his abilities. Sukuna will have domain amplification though. It's safe to say he knows this because we know Kenjaku taught him Open Domain, and Kenjaku also taught the Disaster Curse's domain amplification. So it's fair to say he taught Sukuna it too in the Heian era. So since Sukuna has domain amplification counts Infinity, in hand-to-hand combat I could see Sukuna winning, but this is debatable. Nothing implies Heian Sukuna is a stat amp, only that his body is obviously stronger and better for Jujutsu. A better example, it's not upping his power level, only upping his muscle size. Is it still a pretty big amp though? Because we know physical stats like muscle play a major role in how strong you are on JJK. I know people say Sukuna having 2 more arms won't matter, as Gojo is able to outbox Megumi when Raga and Agito with him, but there's a big difference between this. This is the fact that Raga and Agito are way weaker than Gojo and Sukuna. Raga is directly compared to Yuji, and Agito is even weaker than that. So Gojo is outboxing Sukuna, which is consistent, and someone as fast as Yuta, and someone even slower than Yuta. To make it simpler, Gojo was a 10 in hand-to-hand combat, Sukuna is a 9, Raga's a 6, Agito's a 4. So it makes sense for Gojo to outbox them, but if you were to add 2 extra hands, you would either make Sukuna a 10 or an 11. In the domain clash, the same things would happen since Gojo still has knowledge of the small domain. Something Sukuna would be able to do is come into Gojo's domain by touching him, because Sukuna wouldn't know about that without Kane telling him and Yuji's memories. So if Sukuna just thinks he's that guy and can tank Gojo's domain, he'll lose. Something I could see Sukuna doing is holding Gojo's hands with 2 hands and doing a domain with his other 2 hands. Gojo will obviously still be able to tank Sukuna's domain expansion, but if Sukuna decides to throw a fire arrow, Gojo's dead. If Gojo were to do a nuke, then Sukuna might be able to just use RCC to heal it, as I don't see him getting damaged that often. The way I see this fight going is Sukuna using domain amplification and 1v1ing Gojo, with Sukuna winning the 1v1. In the main clashes, I see them going the same way, with maybe Sukuna using fire arrow and ending the fight earlier, until the point when Megumi touches Gojo's domain. But if I were to guess, I'd say both domains collapse right here. In the next domain clashes, I don't see Sukuna getting as injured as he does. And if they clash again with both domains breaking, and Gojo does domain expansion again, he won't be able to do it. And Sukuna will, because Sukuna has been hit by Limited Void, and Gojo just dies. That makes 2 tallies for Sukuna. Shinjuku Gojo vs 20-finger Yuji Kuna. I see this fight going literally the exact same way as the fight actually went until Sukuna summons Maharaga. This won't happen because obviously Sukuna doesn't have Maharaga, but also won't be needed because Sukuna might be stronger than Gojo and faster. The reason for this is because Yuji is a way stronger vessel than Megumi. I explained this in my 50-finger Sukuna vs Gojo video. I'll explain it again here. The difference between Yuji Kuna and is Yuji and Megumi. And we know Yuji's physicals are way better than Megumi's, with Yuji being faster and stronger. So the same would apply to Sukuna when using the vessels. Yuji Kuna will be physically stronger than Megumi, so the amount Yuji is stronger than Megumi without curse energy. So the difference is a normal guy and Yuji in the first episode. So Yuji Kuna will be faster and stronger than Gojo physically and should be winning the hand-to-hand combat. So Sukuna won't be as injured in this scenario, therefore not getting hit by Limited Void and killing Gojo this domain. This then makes 3 tallies for Sukuna. Post Prison Realm Gojo versus 50-figure Mega. This fight honestly could have happened, but didn't. It's also pretty clear that just get relative, as Sukuna can interrupt Gojo's attacks. Something to note that I will be repeating a lot throughout this video is that Gojo can't scale to Shinjuku Showdown himself. The reason for this is because Gojo just says he does training. We obviously don't know the extent to this training if we're just talking about the switch training. Since we don't know, we just can't use his feats. So honestly, this fight is going to go the exact same way it did originally. This makes 4 tallies for Sukuna. For Shibuya Gojo versus Heian era Sukuna, if you watch this video in order, you should know why Sukuna wins. If you haven't, I'll explain why. Shibuya Gojo can't be scaled to a Shinjuku Showdown himself because he did training, and Heian era Sukuna will be above his 20-finger self physically because of his better body. So Shibuya Gojo would scale to 50-finger Meguna, while Heian era Sukuna is above 20-finger Meguna. Sukuna, however, as I said earlier, taken from the Heian era, so he has no information about Gojo's domain or word cutting slash. We left him in amplification though, as it makes sense since Kenjaku taught him Upper Domain, so obviously he will also teach him domain amplification too. So Sukuna outstats, I don't see why Gojo can win, especially since Gojo won't have the tiny barrier to counter Sukuna's domain, so this tally goes to Sukuna, making it 4. Shibuya Gojo versus 20-finger Yuji Kuna also isn't close. If you watch the video in order, you'll again know why. If not, I'll explain why. Shibuya Gojo can't use Shinjuku feats because he did training, and we can get him the 50-finger Meguna. Yuji Kuna will be stronger than Meguna because Yuji is stronger faster than Megumi. The difference between Yuji physically and Megumi physically. So Sukuna in this scenario is way stronger, and Gojo doesn't have the small domain, so don't see Gojo winning this. So let's make the tally 5 for Sukuna. So hopefully this video helps show why Sukuna is beating Gojo in pretty much every scenario they could have fought that's fair. 5-0 for Sukuna, with Sukuna really being the strongest. I know people will sit here and say I'm a Sukuna glazer, which they're not wrong. But I really tried here not to be biased, because I really don't say away Sukuna is losing any of these. If you think otherwise, comment below. If I agree, and I change my opinion, and people make actually good points, so just call me dumb, I'll delete this video or unlist it and make a new one. Like, sub, peace.